through that one, I guess, right? That's the long reading part, right? So the purpose of this meeting is to hear the following application for a minor variance, A23-002 Brady. The committee is charged with making a decision on the application noted on this agenda. The decision will be based on both oral and written input received and understandings gained. The four key factors on which the decisions are based include: is the application generally in keeping with the intent of the township's official plan? Is the application generally in keeping with the intent of the township zoning bylaw? Is the application desirable for the appropriate development or use of the site? Is the application minor in nature and scope? The junior planner will provide a brief overview of the details on the file. The applicant will be given an opportunity to explain the need for the variance. Then any person or public body in opposition and then in favor of the application will be heard. If a person or public body does not make oral or written submissions to a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Montague before the decision is passed, the person or public body may not be added to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment with respect to the below listed applications, you must submit written request to the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustment at planner@township.montague.on.ca, or you must sign the attendance list provided at the evening's meeting. This will also entitle you to be advised of a possible OLT hearing. Even if you are the successful party, you should request a copy of the decision, since the Committee of the Adjustment decision may be appealed to the OLT by the applicant or another member of the public. The Secretary Treasurer must provide notice of the committee's decision to all those who request a copy. Anyone may appeal the decision to the OLT by filing with the Secretary Treasurer within 20 days of the notice of decision. At this point, I'll ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest or general nature thereof. I see none, which is fantastic. So the approval of the agenda, I have a suggested motion that the agenda be adopted as presented. Do I have a mover? So Karen.
I'll move it.
Brian move, seconded by Karen. Then we have the approval of the minutes. Suggested motion that the Committee of the Adjustment minutes dated May 16th, 2023 be accepted as presented. Moved by Karen, and I'll take Tom this time, sure. Seconded by Tom. Then we'll move into the applicants. So this is where Kirsten takes over.
Okay, good evening. So as we are all aware, Ontario is experiencing a housing crisis. The cost of purchasing a home or buying a property and building a home can make home ownership an impossible reality, especially for young people starting out or for aging parents who want to live independently but close to their children. In 2021, Montague Township recognized the need for housing alternatives and passed an amendment to their zoning bylaw to permit second dwellings, provided that the property permitted single-family dwellings as a principal use. The property has to have legal road access. The development proposed has to comply with the provisions of the zone in which it is located, for example, lot coverage and yard setbacks. Development is not permitted within a floodplain. A second dwelling is required to share the existing entrance, and a second dwelling is to be located within 30 meters of the primary dwelling. The applicants in this file are requesting a variance to build a second home with an attached garage on their 0.74 hectare, 1.83 acre land holding at 274 Weedmark Road. The second home would be accessed by the existing entrance and would be serviced by a separate private well and septic system. Excuse me. So the variance requested is to increase the distance between the two dwellings from 30 meters to 72 meters. The establishment of the 30 meter or less separation distance was to make it clear to individuals that were proposing second dwellings on one property that this was not an automatic precursor for support for a future severance application. But the property that we're discussing this evening wouldn't be a candidate for a consent application anyways. It wouldn't meet the frontage and lot size minimum requirements. So for a severance application, you have to have 46 meters of frontage for both the severed and the retained, and 0.4 hectares per lot. So staff have reviewed the official plan mapping for this property. It is located within a significant wildlife designation, but the property is already developed and the area on the property where the proposed development is suggested is relatively clear and is not anticipated to create a negative impact on this resource. Section 3.3 of the report addresses the zone-specific requirements related to yard setbacks and lot coverage, and the proposal meets with all of these parameters. The application was circulated to township staff. There were no concerns. Public Works did make a comment that they didn't have any concern because it was the same entrance being used for the primary and second dwelling. The application was also circulated to public agencies for comment. Following the writing of the report before you, RVCA did provide comments that they had no objections, which is good. Application was also circulated to landowners within 60 meters. No comments were received. And notice of the public meeting was posted on the website and by the applicant at the subject property. Pardon me, dry throat. Okay, so when evaluating, applications for minor variances, we're required to look at the four-pronged test that's in the Planning Act. So the first question is whether or not the application meets with the intent of the OP. And the subject property is located in the rural designation, which permits residential development and second dwellings in certain zones. And the rural zone where this property is located is appropriate. The OP also requires natural heritage features and be protected and hazards be avoided. As stated previously, this property is located within a significant wildlife designation, but this development isn't anticipated to have a negative impact. There are no hazards to be considered. And accordingly, staff feel that these have been adequately addressed within this report. And this proposal meets with the intent of the OP. The second question is whether or not the application meets the intent of the zoning bylaw. The subject property is located in the rural zoning designation. Single dwellings are permitted uses. The second dwelling is going to share the existing entrance, and the variance requested relates specifically to the separation distance between the existing and the proposed second dwelling. And as indicated previously, the rationale for this separation distance wouldn't be relevant in this case. The property would not qualify for severance support. So staff feels these points have been adequately addressed and that this proposal meets with the intent of the zoning bylaw. The third question is whether or not the proposal is desirable or appropriate. The development proposed is for a second dwelling. The property is on a township road and is located in an area of like development. The current housing crisis needs municipalities to provide options in areas where it is appropriate and can be accommodated. And Montague Township acknowledged this in 2021 when they passed the zoning amendment permitting second dwellings. Staff are of the opinion that the proposal is desirable and appropriate use of the land. And the fourth and final question is whether or not the proposal is minor and how the proposal might impact adjacent property owners and the neighborhood. The proposed dwelling is not anticipated to negatively impact the neighbors, nor would it be negatively impacted by adjacent or nearby uses. No objections or concerns were raised by any landowners or agencies during the circulation process. So accordingly, so based on this information and the conditions suggested below, the increased separation distance of 72 meters proposed would meet the four tests for evaluating a minor variance under the Planning Act. Staff would accordingly recommend that the variance requested to accommodate the proposed relief from the established 30-meter separation distance to the requested 72 meters between the existing single-family dwelling and the proposed second dwelling be granted, provided the committee is satisfied that any issues raised during the public meeting do not require further evaluation, the submission of additional information, or the application of conditions other than as follows. Number one, the variance is solely for relief from the separation distance between the primary and second dwelling, increased from 30 meters to 72 meters to permit the construction of a second dwelling. The minor variance is approved based on the sketch submitted with the application. The applicant is required to obtain all required building and septic permits from the Township of Montague. And the applicant is required to obtain a civic address for the second dwelling from the Township of Montague. So.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Kirsten. I think that's pretty well summed up, but I think that's also one of those things too, as well as the 30-meter setback that was set by the township too as well. I think you alluded to that too as well, that it's there for a reason, and then we can find where it's appropriate to make those changes, which is, I think, is obviously an obvious example for that. So I think that's great, a great point. So at this time, if the applicant, I'm assuming, is in front of us right now, if he has anything to say or any points at all, it'd be fantastic. This is your chance.
I don't think I have any points. Yeah, I just want to kind of build a garage. We moved into our home. We had no kids at the time. We're a growing family. A very narrow lot. I've always wanted to have a separate garage. To the left and right of our house, there's just no room. Wanted it always in the backyard. And then another good point is, yeah, it has to be the further back distance because of our septic. It's really the only place I thought we could build it. So I don't have much to say other than that, unless you guys have questions. Thank you very much.
Does anybody have questions at all? Or?
No, pretty straightforward.
I think it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's basically it's a garage, so it's a
Yeah,
Garage with
like
a
we thought if we're
toilet.
gonna be back there, it'd be nice to have water in the bathroom.
Yep.
That was the idea.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. No, I think that's great, and I hope the process for you was nice and walked through.
Yeah, you guys have been terrific to deal with. Yeah.
So that's great to hear too as well. So that's sort of the goal as we go through this process, is as you're doing cool things like this, that we make it work for you too as well. So
yeah, no, I had no doubt in my mind it was going to be nice to deal with you guys. So
perfect, awesome, that's great. So I love easy stuff like this. Anything else as far as now? Do we need a motion to pass that, or are we just
The recommended decision. We need a
We have to
motion.
make a vote.
Yes, that's just not on my sheet here. That's why. So I guess the suggested motion would be that we approve the application.
The recommended
As submitted.
decision.
Do I have a firster? So bring Brian, and then we'll get Jim involved here too as well. All in favor? And usually passed. And then that's about it. So we have the adjournment then. So we have no other business, nothing else to share. That's good. So the adjournment will be session motion of the Committee of Adjustment meeting adjourn at 5:43. So we have a firster. Pick you this time. And we'll go back to Brian. And all in favor? And we are adjourned.